Welcome back to Pocono Mountains Podcast. I'm Jim Hamill. On the last episode, we dove into the history of Pike County, including Gray Towers, the Columns Museum, and the Zane Grey Museum. This time, we're going to head back to Carbon County for some historical perspective from the coal mines to the jail that housed the infamous Molly Maguires. The Poconos has a lot of places where you can find out all about the region's history, which you can then weave into your weekend getaway or a lengthy stay with family or friends. The Poconos is a year-round destination for millions, and with 2,400 square miles of lakes, forests, rivers, and mountains with historic downtowns and iconic family resorts, it's the perfect getaway for a weekend or an entire week. You can always find out more on PoconoMountains.com or watch Pocono Television Network, streaming live 24/7. Thanks for listening to Pocono Mountains Podcast. We'll have a new episode each week, highlighting lots of fun things you can experience while you're visiting the Poconos here in Pennsylvania. Subscribe to Pocono Mountains Podcast and leave a review and comment on whatever platform you listen. We are going to begin this episode with Chris Barrett and Ashley Brooks going underground to the No. 9 Coal Mine and Museum to go back in time. Then Chris gets locked up in the old jail museum in Jim Thorpe that has a claim to infamy during the coal mining days as well. And last, a quick stop at the Harry Packer Mansion in Jim Thorpe. Enjoy this history lesson on Carbon County's past.
Hi folks, we are, believe it or not, 160 feet below ground level in a real mine. Not a fake one, a real one. This is on the site of the No. 9 mine we actually just talked about a little bit ago, so we wanted you to get an additional taste. I even drug Ashley down here with me.
You did. You didn't pay me for this either. So I want a full experience. I have lots of questions. It's a little chilly, and obviously I'm a little high maintenance with my umbrella, but that's okay. We're still going to deliver the information that you guys are looking for.
See, I beat her to the punch. I was going to get on her about the umbrella, but...
Well, not all of us can have a hat, Chris. Okay, so you just hold on to that hefty hat of yours.
Well, I thought you were going to say like I had a big head or something like that.
I wasn't going there. Not today.
No, she's actually the brains of the operation here. But you know, the brains really are kind to our right and to our left. These two gentlemen, Dave from the No. 9 mine, Scott, who we spoke with before, they can tell you so much about really where we're at right now and some of the really neat things. So Ashley, I'm going to hand you this for Dave, right?
Thank you. Dave, give us a little bit of information about what we really want to know here at No. 9.
All right, well, I haven't a lot of information, it's just a matter of what you want to hear.
Okay, well, I want to know about the women. Let's just go right for the
we'll
gusto,
get back to
right?
the
Because
women.
I'm the only woman here.
All
We'll just
righty.
represent here
Yeah,
for
that's
a second,
interesting.
okay? So I do want to know, I mean, what is the history of women and coal mining?
All right, well, over in England in 1838, you had about 26 to 29 women and children drowned in the mine. And what happened then, they passed a law in 1842, no women will work in any coal mine or around them. And that went all the way to Germany, France, Italy, and all the countries. And as they came into America here to open up the mines here, that carried on. No women will work in the mines. Now, they had no women working in the mines. Over in Schuylkill County with the bootleg and independent mines, they snuck women in. But the only women now working in the mines is down at Bituminous mines, and you have a lot of women down there, and they're doing a fantastic job. Now, what happened then, during World War II, they decided, we're going to hire women, and they did hire 16 or 19 women from Nescahoning. They called them the Bloomer Girls because of the leggings that they had. And they were all set to come in, but the union fought them and fought them and fought them that they didn't come in, and the war was over, they didn't need them anymore. The union was afraid the women would take their places. But when I talked to the women from Bituminous mines that came up, they said, a lot of the men even said to them, you know what, you're better than some of these guys that work with me. So the women did a fantastic job. But then in 1979, our government passed the law, women could work anywhere they wanted. But the sad part of it is, some of them that started in the mines, at that deep mines, they all shut down, and all them women didn't have no job no more, except on the surface, which they do have now.
So, Mr. Dave, you are truly a diamond in the rough, and I am not joking about that. You
Thank
have
you.
so much information. And we are so grateful to have you here with us. So if you have anything else to add to that, Scott, good luck following that one.
Well, when I was younger and the little bit that I did of mining underground, the lady who pulled the cars out of the mine with the heisting mechanism, she was part of the family that I went underground with, and she was really the head of the thing pretty much. So, but she liked to stay up top, even though every once in a while she would go underneath.
Though this is cool, and I'm a little chilly. I will tell you though that we are provided jackets, so if anyone's worried like I was about the temperature in here, which right now I think it's 52 degrees, right? 52 degrees, they do provide jackets.
So now that we're actually in here, Scott, tell us just a little bit about where we are and if guests come in here, what they'll see.
Well, we are in the main tunnel, which leads into the mine, and this is where all of the coal is evacuated out from all the parts of the mine that are operated. And this is the main gangway tunnel. The miners would come in the train that we came in, and right behind us, and they would go to work. And in the old days, of course, everything was brought in, including them, by mule. And then it became mechanized, as you can see. This is a battery motor that we have here to bring us in. And this is what brings people in the tour today.
That's very cool.
But this is a nice environment, by the way, in a way, to work in February when it's 14 degrees outside. You come into a humid and nice place at 52 degrees.
There you go. It's all about perspective.
That's
right?
it.
So then, Scott, one other thing too is when miners work this mine, would it be possible that they would come in the morning and not see daylight and leave before seeing daylight again?
Oh, very much so, because miners are independent contractors. They are paid on production. They are not standard employees as we would think of them today. And so what happens is, if your foreman, who is responsible for your safety and the production of your team, if your foreman decided we're going to keep working until we get that coal out because we need to have so much money to pay everybody, you're going to work long hours. So you could easily in the wintertime be in here well over 8 hours, which means that you don't see any sunshine.
So we have, I think, time for about one more question. So if the guests would come here to the mine, what one thing should they really see when they go underground?
Well, we have actually, here at the number 9, we have a lot of nice little stations of interest that will probably appeal to everybody. Probably one of the most unique things we have here that remains, many mines had them, but only we have one that remains, is the Dr. Young Memorial Hospital. And that was the first aid center inside the mine should an accident occur. And it was that step of having one that helped the survivability rate of accidents tremendously through the years.
So as you can tell, folks, there's just so much to see here in the number 9 mine. So we want to invite you to come to the number 9 mine. Please log on to PoconoMountains.com, check out everything. Also, the 250th anniversary, heritage anniversary of anthracite mining is coming up this year as well. And for Ashley and for me, Chris Barrett, thanks for watching. Having grown up in this area, I heard many, many stories about the Molly Maguires. It was a really interesting tale, told to me many times by many different people. I just happen to be here right now in the Old Jail Museum in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, Carbon County. A movie had been shot here as well in 1968. It was called The Molly Maguires. The Molly Maguires was a really interesting story about immigrants that had come here to mine coal for the United States, of course, and for the mine operators. And it's just a really, really interesting tale. So I can't do that justice, but one person can. Her name is Betty Lou McBride. She can tell us all about that and about some real fascinating things that happened in Jim Thorpe and Carbon County. We're here with Betty Lou McBride, again, the owner of the Old Jail Museum. She knows everything there is to know about this property, about the Molly Maguires, and especially about Jim Thorpe and Carbon County itself. So, Betty, tell us about the Molly Maguires.
The Molly Maguires were the coal miners from Ireland who came here from Ireland in the 1800s. They had little money in Ireland, they had hard conditions, so they came here hoping to find streets of gold. What they found were signs in the windows, help wanted, great, I can get a job. But after it said, no Irish need apply. Lots of persecution for the Irish in those days. The men finally found jobs in the mines, and they found conditions difficult in the mines. They had little pay. They fought back against these problems that they had, and they found that no one would help them. The fighting started. Eventually, people were killed on both sides, and the men finally were arrested, held, and tried here in the old jail museum.
So when you talk about fighting between two sides, there were the corporations that owned the mines, right? And then there were also the Molly Maguires, but that really wasn't who they were, correct?
The Molly Maguires were not really a group. There was no organization, as far as anyone has found any records, of the Molly Maguires. There were Ancient Order of Hibernians, which is the social civic group, which exists today and does a lot of good for a lot of people. And they existed then. They were not the Molly Maguires, but the Molly Maguires was a name given to the coal miners so that they could then have one group that they talked about and one group that people could then fight against, because they were trying hard to make things better, and the coal companies did not necessarily want to pay better salaries or pay for better conditions in the mines.
So here in the Old Jail Museum, there's an unsolved mystery in cell 17, right?
Yes, there is an unsolved mystery, and before his hanging, Thomas Fisher in 1878 proclaimed his innocence, said he was not guilty of the murder for which he was being hanged, and he put his left hand on the wall of his cell, said, "I'm innocent, my handprint will stay to show that I'm innocent." And the handprint's been there since that time. It's been painted over, it's been dug out, it's been replastered, it's been tested by a gas chromatograph, but there's nothing there on the wall except the handprint, which is still there on the wall for you to see today.
So the group called the Molly Maguires, not all of them actually were jailed here correctly, and not all were hanged here, correct?
Right, there were several hundred men that were in the group which was named the Molly Maguires. Eventually there were 20 men hanged, not all here. There were 7 men hanged here, 4 in 1877, 1 in 1878, and 2 in 1879.
Wow. And the movie itself, it seems like a lot of folks around here are really interested in what happened at the time period that the movie was filmed. And some of the actors were actually in this building, and filming was done here, correct?
Sean Connery was right here in this building, yes. I'm sorry I wasn't here at that time, though. And Richard Harris and Samantha Eggar were the 3 main stars. They were here in town. The movie was filmed here in the building. The hanging was done outside in the courtyard in the movie. The actual story that it tells is the story of Kehoe being hanged over in Pottsville. This was used as a movie location. Both the jail was used, the streets of Jim Thorpe, and the courthouse downtown.
And this is just one of the attractions here in Jim Thorpe that we feel is a real must-see, but take us back maybe 15 or 20 years ago and tell us what a guest would have found if they would have come into Jim Thorpe.
Well, I can take you back a little bit farther than that, Chris. When we came to town in 1980, we went downtown to see the Christmas lights, and the only red and green light was the traffic light at the corner. There were no white lights, no red or green lights, there was nothing. The town was almost deserted. At that time, there were about 11 businesses, including 2 banks, in the downtown. There was no hotel, no restaurants, no bed and breakfast, no attractions, no theater, no shops, and no visitors.
Wow, so really the visitor center downtown in the train station now, we see about 200,000 people a year through that visitor center.
You wouldn't have found 10 then. The visitor center was there. Mrs. McCartney had the visitor center going, but when my children were growing up here, we'd see someone with a camera and we'd say, "Look, there's a tourist," and they'd chase them down the street and give them information on the town. But there were no attractions in town except for the beautiful mountains and the beautiful buildings and the things like that that were already here. There was nothing for a visitor to come and buy or eat in this town.
Well, I think folks like you who had the foresight to preserve these types of buildings and also the ones in town for historical perspective are to be really thanked and congratulated. With just a few minutes that we have left, can you just tell us like how many folks have come through the Old Jail Museum through all these years, and maybe one or two stories that always stick out with you?
Well, I actually have never sat down to figure out how many. We have right now, we have about 25,000 visitors in 6 months, in the 6 months that we're open. We started with probably 15,000 24 years ago, so each year we've increased. And I presume we have every state represented every year, and we have, last year we had about 21 foreign countries. A lot of people from Russia last year. Of course, we have a lot of people from England and a lot of people from Ireland, but the Russian and from those countries around Russia, we had a lot of influx last year from them. A lot of Japanese coming in from the different side. It's a place to come see of something you don't normally see. You usually don't get into a jail. You hopefully don't get into a jail. And you can see how people lived back in the olden days in a jail and a current jail. But it's also part of history. It's the story of the men who worked, enslaved, and suffered for the lifestyle that we have today. They did not expect to see the rewards of it. We're reaping the rewards of the work that they did back then.
Well, truer words have never been spoken, and they're right here in the Old Jail Museum in Jim Thorpe. Betty Lou, we thank you so much for being with us and sharing some of your stories. Pat is an innkeeper here, so this is an actual working inn, in addition to being a wonderful museum, which is very, very rare. So I want Pat to tell us more about this because there's a lot of really unique things here, Pat. So thanks for being with us. Kind of tell us some of the things you were talking to us about before, like about Disney. It's just so fascinating.
Sure. Yes, we are a working inn, and we are a museum, but we're kind of a please touch museum. Everybody's welcome to sit on the furniture, touch the things, enjoy the house. We'd love to share it with the guests. We also specialize in murder mystery weekends, so you get to really be...
You like that, right?
I do. I think it's so much fun. We don't get to hear about that anywhere, really. So it's pretty special that you guys have that. And you get to dress up as the family, correct?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
How fun is that?
So what is it? Yeah. Tell us about that, Pat. That's cool.
Sure. We've been doing it for 34 years. We joke that we're the longest running off-Broadway play. And our guests check in every Friday night. A crime is committed, and they spend the weekend as the Packer family trying to figure out which one of them committed the dastardly deed.
So they dress up too?
They can. We give them a prop that's the essence of their character, and they can dress up if they would like to, but it's not required. But some of the groups like to.
Those were some special insights into some of the best historic attractions you can find during a visit to Carbon County and Jim Thorpe. Want to learn more? Head to PoconoMountains.com. Thanks again for listening to Pocono Mountains Podcast. You can subscribe to us anywhere podcasts are available and leave a review and or comment.
It's time to get out. Enjoy the weather. Take that vacation. You need it. It's all right here in the Pocono Mountains. Enjoy adventures. Be wet and wild. Play the slots. Take a relaxing hike.
Don't miss Explore the Pocono Mountains 350. It's the green flag for 2021. Get your tickets at PoconoRaceway.com.
We're back. Thanks for listening to Pocono Mountains Podcast. I'm Jim Hamill. Now for a Pocono Mountains Podcast Extra, a recent story from our monthly program, Pocono Mountains Magazine, about the Irish heritage of Jim Thorpe that aired in March, right before St. Patrick's Day. From the moment you arrive in Jim Thorpe, you are transported back in time. Buildings that have stood for well over a century and with stories to tell. Back then, this was Mock Chunk, a town built on coal mining and the Irish.
The Irish built a lot of the town during the heyday, of course, the really wealthy periods from the mid to late 1800s. John Dolan, who built this house, was no exception.
From his bed and breakfast in the heart of town, Michael Rivkin shares the history of the Dolan House and its namesake, James Dolan from Ireland, who rose to prominence in this boomtown in the late 1800s. And Dolan was not alone.
The Irish came over and did a lot of that craftsmanship. Yes, they worked in the mines. They were really tough lives. They got their start here. And they elevated themselves socially to the point where John Dolan, for example, became the chief financial officer to Asa Packer.
There was big industry here, and for many of the Irish immigrants, they worked in the mines.
Lots of deaths in the coal mines. People struggled to eat, struggled to make a living. Sadly, the social systems were against them.
And nowhere is that tale of the struggle for the Irish more evident than at the Old Jail Museum, still intact and open for tours during the warmer months. Blaine Dart is now steward of this historic property where the infamous Molly Maguires were hung.
The Molly Maguires were a group who came over from Ireland. They were coal miners, and they were actually convicted of murder down in the mines.
There was even a major motion picture filmed in Jim Thorpe about the whole ordeal, starring Sean Connery. The story still haunts the jail and the memory of what some believe was an injustice.
Most of them are perceived as victims. Now, we don't know 100% if they are innocent or guilty. There has been much evidence recently discovered that they are innocent, and then some are obviously guilty. I believe personally that some were innocent.
There's even a popular pub in the center of town bearing their name in one of the town's oldest standing buildings.
The miners naturally were hung up the street in the old jail, which is now a museum. And yeah, I mean, this whole town is basically Irish-German, as all the history books will tell you.
For history enthusiasts, this jail with its lasting impression of those who went before, and this town, are a perfect fit for celebrating that Irish heritage. Visitors can come in touch with places of historical significance that have been preserved for generations.
I think it's unique that we keep that. A great example is the jail, Carbon County Jail. We all know what happened at the jail with the hanging of the Molly Maguires. That's got to be preserved, and that's got to be told to our children and our children's children and grandchildren so that things like that don't ever happen again.
Jim Thorpe's mayor is quick to point out that there's still a strong Irish community in town, having held an annual St. Patrick's Parade for many years, and now shifting to an annual festival, likely next year.
People in Jim Thorpe are extremely proud of their Irish heritage.
We hope to bring that back for 2022, and one more way to celebrate the heritage of the town and the Irish who built it.
A historic town, what it is today thanks in part to the Irish men and women who sacrificed so much to make life better for future generations. The number 9 coal mine and museum, the old jail museum, and the Harry Packer mansion are all perfect stops during a visit to the Poconos to get a history lesson and to appreciate the lasting legacies left for us all. We hope you enjoyed Pocono Mountains Podcast. Please remember to subscribe anywhere podcasts are available. Come visit us in the Pocono Mountains. Book your trip today.